Oh, good evening, everyone. I don't know why that's doing that again. Stop. Macca. Oh my God, Macca. What an afternoon. What an afternoon. I haven't got you off mute. Bloody hell.
Fiend, you got to be the coach of the Crows or something.
Oh, shit you not, mate. It's been an absolute disaster this afternoon. I'm very I'm very glad to be here because bugger me. It was touch and go there for a minute. It really was. It was touch and go. Okay. But never mind. Never mind. I'm not organised. I'm not anything. This is going to be the worst podcast in the history of the world. My cameras aren't set properly. The chat isn't justifying, so it's running off the screen. Mate, I don't understand it. But anyway.
Look, we're talking about a shit show of a game, so it's all okay.
It is all okay. But, we like to at least try and be professional here. But anyway, look, thanks to everyone who's joined us foolishly on the show tonight. We very much appreciate it. We will, despite the average graphics that are going to be on display tonight, we will be talking quite a bit, Max. So those that are listening, just don't look at the screen. Just listen to the words. I would say that's probably the best bet. What do you reckon?
Well, what we got to say might be better the other way around, mate.
All right, look. First of all, as I said, thanks to everyone who's joined us. What a fantastic weekend of footy, Mac. The whole thing with a bit more lead time. I mean, last year was great, but this year was just another step above, wasn't it? Where'd you go? Why are you now not talking? Mac, I can't hear you. Macca, what have you done? I can't hear you. Why can't I hear you, Macca? Oh, for goodness sakes, the bloody... Hang on. Macca, come back. Come back, Macca. You got to come back on the stage. There we. I don't know what happened.
I'm back. well,
I don't know what happened.
I think I was about to talk and I got sent into bloody orbit. I didn't know where I was.
I don't know what happened. Anyway, that's pretty much the size of it at the moment. So God help us all. Right, look. What I was saying before I rudely kicked you out. Gather round. Like another step up on last year, wasn't it?
It really was, and credit to Alan Auscus and crew. I mean, they stuff up the ambulance thing, but they do the gather round very, very well indeed. And it was a step up on last year. Bringing back the party at Norwood Parade, that was a big thing in my mind. It was just
very much.
It just gave a great carnival atmosphere to it. And I know that there are rumours that the AFL are thinking about the possibility of taking it elsewhere. Now, if they did, that would be insanity there's only one place that can work like this, and that's Adelaide. And for very obvious reasons, and that's because, firstly, you can't have Victoria because they've got 12 teams there, so that's they're out. So then you've got to look at what's next. Adelaide's hop, skip, and a jump from bloody Melbourne.
What the hell?
WA to come. It's not that far for New South Wales people to catch a plane compared to Victoria's either. But if they had it in New South Wales, for example, they can't have West Australia. It's just too remote. If you go to New South Wales, you've got a situation where you've got, if they went to suburban grounds in New South Wales, no bastard to go there. Their crowds would be down shockingly. The only place where it could possibly work is Queensland. That's the only possible place it could work because people would go up there for a holiday. But by the same token, it's going to cost a fortune to get there or most of Australia to do that. So in my opinion, South Australia is the only state that works well for gather round.
Well, and Mac, I'll put my parochial bias hat on for a minute. South Australia is an integral part of the football fabric in Australia, and we get precious little, right? The things that were dear to us have kind of been ripped off. The state of origin, we don't get an AFL grand final, we don't get special treatment. We get a couple of showdowns a year, but that's only against stupid Port Adelaide anyway. I think it's a really good way to honour the heritage of football in South Australia. And yes, I know there's heritage in WA, and I think that the AFL should look at something that the Western Australian people can get around as well. But I don't think it's gather round. I think gather round is, particularly if you look at it, it's just betting in even further. And by the time 4 years comes around, the AFL will be crazy to A, dilute it with multiple gather rounds, and B, take it to another place where it's possibly not going to be a success. I just think it's a great way for South Australia to showcase itself and to celebrate AFL football and to experience, Mac, what we used to experience when we were kids, which is 8 rounds of footy a week.
Correct. Absolutely.
Instead of one game a weekend, This is how footy used to be for the younger brigade that are listening to us. This is how footy used to be in South Australia, and this is how the footy is in Melbourne. You got half a dozen rounds of footy, 7 or 8 rounds of footy constantly every weekend. We haven't had that for years now in high level football. So I think it deserves to stay here, and I'd be very, very sad if they decided to do something else.
Now, Valley Magic makes the point about the 19th team once Tasmania comes in. Well, firstly, that it does muddy the water a little, but you can't split gather round. Is one of the concepts that is being proposed is into different states at different times. That's not gather round then. Gather round is when everybody's together. Now, I know the 19 teams, but what would happen, in my opinion, is that the Adelaide and Port Adelaide, their home teams, we would always play, and the other 17 teams would have a bye once every 17 years. So, if you're going to create an uneven amount of teams, you're going to create problems anyhow. So that's one way around it, and I think the only way around it. But I don't think it should leave South Australia because that's where it is always going to be 100% successful.
I think so, mate. I think so. I really do. Look, we've got a couple of years to bet it in even further. They're talking about a Barossa round next year, which I think would be fantastic if they can pull it off logistically. I know that there was a lot of work done at Anguston Oval last year in preparation. They couldn't quite get it to sort out. But I reckon another 12 months and they'll get that game up at Anguston as well, just to showcase the Barossa. And I'd talk about attracting tourists, and then you've got Live Golf coming up in a couple of weeks as well. If they can continue to coordinate those two events and get people into this state for 2 or 3 weeks, just an amazing end of autumn sort of extravaganza for South Australian sport.
Correct. 100% agree.
And you talk about the 19th team, Mac, and that kind of is a little bit of a segue into a couple of little whispers. I have heard, and many others have heard, and it's been thrown around the traps that the AFL aren't particularly keen on a 19-team competition, and certainly it's put the spidey senses up on a couple of potential interested parties. One out of WA, one out of Newcastle, and one out of South Australia, Norwood, Macca.
Yes, I did hear that. That Norwood are interested in being that 20th team. But Tasmania's still got to get in, mate. They've got to still build a bloody stadium. And then at the moment, their government's saying no. AFL is saying yes. That's the condition of you coming in, which is a stadium with a roof. And at this stage, Tasmania is holding out and saying no. It's not, to me, it's not 100% guaranteed that Tasmania will come in.
No, I agree with that. I think there's a long way to go. It was a fairly rushed sort of an announcement, a lot of contingencies, a lot of what ifs and maybes, and dependent on political situations there. I don't think they can. I think they need to have a stadium with a roof, to be honest with you, Mac. I think, it's all right having 2 or 3 rounds down there, but we all know how the weather can be in Tassie, and I think a stadium with a roof with a 30,000, 40,000 capacity is what's needed. And if they're serious about having a team in the comp, and if they have identified and calculated the benefits to them economically, then they should just go ahead and do it.
Well, that's exactly right. But I guess it will eventually happen, but it's Tasmania that will have to give in, not the AFL. It's the AFL's comp. So the Tasmania want to come in. There are conditions clearly laid down for them to do that. And, they can dither around, or they'll just stay on the outside if that's what they want to do.
Do you see a situation... Sorry, go on.
Sorry, go on. No, you've got to say, do I see a situation?
I was going to say, do you see a situation where the AFL might compromise and have them playing 50% of their home games in Melbourne and 50% in Tasmania for the first couple of seasons while they get the shit sorted?
I don't think so. Port Scotty, he's made it very clear, stadium with a roof or not at all, as far as he's concerned.
Yep.
And he's only one voice, but he's very typical of all the other clubs as well. I don't want to go down there and slog away in mud.
No, well, it's a commercial situation, right? And the simple fact is that the existing 18 clubs will see their revenue potentially diluted somewhat, and it's got to be commercially viable for the whole competition. And you don't want to introduce a lame duck into the competition. We've already got a couple of those in the competition. You certainly don't want to saddle the comp with any more. I'm with you on that one, Mac. I reckon there's a lot of water to go under the bridge before we see Tasmania in. But if we do see Tasmania in, and I'll throw it open to the people that are watching us on YouTube and watching us during the week on YouTube to put in the comments, if Norwood came in, or a combined Sturt-Norwood composite team came in, not forgetting that Sturt and Norwood partnered up initially to try and combat Port's bid, would you, if you were an existing Norwood or perhaps Sturt fan, or any other fan for that matter, would you consider switching your allegiance from the Crows to Norwood?
No. Simply no. No. I've got a team. It's Crows.
I reckon there'd be a few that would, Mac.
Well, they probably would, and that's the whole problem. I don't believe this state can afford to run 3 teams.
No, I mean, I think that's probably the biggest concern. We're only a state of 1.5 or whatever mil. We're scratching to fill the stadium once a week. with two teams.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think, I'd like to see the model. I have no doubt that Norwood would present a very professional and very watertight proposal. I just don't know whether there's the numbers.
No, to me, I think it's a dream. We don't have it. There just isn't a number of people prepared to go to the football to fill the stand for three teams.
All right. Mac, as I said, thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord and YouTube and all our other platforms on Twitter as well. If you'd like to have your say, if you are on Discord, then go ahead and put your hand up in the studio audience there and we'll get you on. But in the meantime, Macca, why don't we just crack on to Macca's bloody... What's your thing?
The other game. Yeah, well,
the games. Let's do that, shall we? So we'll forget our first game on Thursday night, of course. We'll cover that shortly. But on Friday night, we had the Lions comfortably in the end, 16-16, 1-1-2 to North, 6-6-42, 70 points in the end there to Brisbane to get them off the mark.
Well, not a surprising result when you think about it. It's last year's grand finalist versus last year's bottom team. So that's really, for Brisbane, that was just a gimme to get going. I said, it just wasn't really a competition. It was really a bit of a waste of a game. Danaher at full forward, and he and Hipwood, they finally came good, and they got 8 goals between them. The midfield was dominated by Neil, Zorko, Dunkley, etc. Not much to talk about. It was a one-sided game. I just want to say, though, North Melbourne do have some very promising youngsters, and they will be a better team in the years to come. They really do have some good youngsters there. Cheesel's outstanding.
All right. Next game, Essendon and Port Adelaide. Even start, and then Port just tore them a new one. 17-9, 1-1-1 to 6-6-42. The powerfully by 69 points.
It's embarrassing, Bean, because there are two teams in this state, and one team's going down the tube, and this is a team that's Port Adelaide, who's built themselves up into be a pretty good side. They brought in some players to bolster their deficiencies in defence, but their midfield is just outstanding. When you look at Rosie, Butters, and Horn Francis strutted his stuff there on the weekend, it just showed. I mean, that midfield is probably as good as any other one in the competition, and it makes me very envious when I look at it. But I think they've got a very good future. I don't know that they're a premiership side, but they've got Georgiada's coming back, gave a real lift up in the forward line, took some really good marks. So overall, they're a pretty even team, but they have that outstanding midfield, and they'll certainly be in the finals. Whether they can win it, that's another story. They might. For Essendon, I thought they were pretty poor on the day. Merritt and Martin were very, very good for them, but there weren't too many others who put up their hand. And just to finish that match on, I'll just send a cheerio out there to one of the listeners, which is my daughter-in-law. She happens to be a Port supporter, Melanie, but she also listens to CrowCast, mate. So she's a good girl.
Yeah, I know a few Port supporters that listen to us. I don't know why. Probably because of you, mate.
Probably.
All right, next up, the Swans in the end by 26 points. Didn't have it all their own way. 15-14, 104 to 11, 12, 78.
No, West Coast put up a good showing, really, against the side in Sydney, who I regard as potentially one of the final. Well, they will be in the finals. But one of the ones that could possibly win the finals if they put their act together on the day. No, I thought they did very, very well. Harley Reid actually showed he is a good footballer, and he showed some real talent. So, in fact, they actually led at half-time, if I remember rightly, and it was in the second half, of course, then that Sydney got going and won the game. But no, good effort by West Coast. A better effort by West Coast.
A close one between the Dockers and Carlton. Carlton eventually getting up a little bit This wasn't the one. 10-13-73 to 9-9-63, 10 points in the end, Mac.
Well, it is controversial. I think that's probably the main thing to talk about in that particular game. Obviously a close game, and Freo led all day except for about the last 1 minute and 30 seconds. A ball was kicked forward into Carlton's forward line, and you could see the bloody ball ricocheted off somebody's head, and it turned from a drop punt into a reverse screw punt, and yet the umpires paid Cottrell a mark. And because naturally the Freo people were outraged, but unfortunately, and the mark stood. He kicked a goal, which put them from behind to the front. And then one of the Freo players muttered something which the umpire didn't like, and he gave him another kick there that meant they were now 10 points down with less than a minute to play by the time this was all played out. I just thought to myself, it was a shocking decision to pay that mark. I mean, talk about blind mice, 4 blind mice sitting out there. They're supposed to be umpires, and they can't see a ball hit a guy's head and go from a drop punt to a screwy in midair, and they pay a mark. Now, the idea of having 4 umpires was so that such things like that couldn't happen. So, if that mark had been paid, it would have been a scrimmage, and I believe that Freo, who'd been leading all day, would have probably held on to win. But that was, firstly, a disgraceful piece of umpiring to give the free kick. And if I was an umpire, I would expect there to be lots of muttering and grumbling and moaning and groaning and things said. And I would have just gone back to the centre of the ground. But no, he paid it to the letter of the law, and he was entitled to. But if he was a decent man, he wouldn't have, because he was bloody wrong. That's all I got to say.
Well, the problem was a fair bit that you've had to say there in a roundup. The only thing that I'd say to that, Mac, is that the 4 umpire system was not brought in for that purpose. The 4 umpire system was brought in so that the umpires didn't have to run as far, because they don't position themselves in order to maximise the opportunity to make the right decision. There's not all 4 umpires are in play, unfortunately. So you don't get the benefit of having 4 sets of eyes on a contest, because 4 sets of eyes aren't on the contest. There's 1 set of eyes looking behind the play. Yeah, but there's not. That's what I'm saying. There's not.
There's got to be at least 2. Got to be at least 2.
Yeah, I know. But you're talking about the 4 umpire system. The 4 umpire system has not done anything to improve decisions, because not all 4 sets of eyes are on the contest. Do you understand what I'm talking about?
I do. I understand what you're saying. But by the same token, you would think that because there are 4, and then 2, if you had 2 in defence and 2 in the forward line, whereas before with 3, the third one could be anywhere, but there should be at least 2 sets of eyes looking at it.
Yeah, but there's always been that. There's always been that. That's what I'm saying. It's no improvement. Anyway, let's move on. The Cats by 4 in a very entertaining game, 14-11-95 to 14-7-91 over the Bulldogs.
Yeah, look, it was a good game. I thought the Cats always sort of just had, and it was like that with the scoreboard too, they just seemed to just have the Bulldogs measure. Bontempelli was absolutely outstanding, as was Liberatore. I mean, the Italian Stallions, they played really good football. They were outstanding, both of them, and they did everything possible to get their team up, but they just couldn't, because that Geelong defence, they have a very good defence. It's led by Stewart, and they all drop back, and it's almost impenetrable at times. And it was a very entertaining game to watch. You're quite right, Dean. And I feel very envious, that the Bulldogs, they've got in Sanders, they have found gold, mate. He is going to be a star, that boy.
Yes, we don't seem to be able to dig those up very often, do we?
We don't.
And then we had another entertaining game, I thought. The Suns just lacking a little bit of polish. Giants 18-9-117 to Gold Coast 13-11-89, 28 points in the end.
Yeah, Gold Coast, to their credit, or naivety, whichever way you look at it, they played 3 first game players in the one game. Two of them actually played well. Just check their name, Clohesy, I think, and Graham. And both those two boys played very well. The third boy, not quite so well. But Gold Coast took it right up to GWS, but GWS are a very, very strong side and are very, very hard to beat. And try as hard as Gold Coast would, they just had too much firepower, and in the end they just ran out of easy winners. Let's leave it there so we can move on quickly.
Very good. And the Saints getting up after Richmond looked early as if they were all over them, but St Kilda fought their way back and got up by 7 points, 9-13-67 and 9-6-60.
Well, if you only watched the first quarter, you would have thought it was a bloody miracle that Saints won.
That's all I did watch.
Well, I mean, you must have thought being absolutely staggered when you saw the result.
Yeah, I was.
Because, I mean,
yeah, I was.
It was so one-sided in that first quarter. But for all that one-sidedness, they only led by, I think, 22 points at the quarter time. And the Saints gradually came back, and then in touch and go, they got on top. Richmond still kept fighting on, but it was, to Ross Lyon's credit, he's a very good coach. He made several moves which shut down people like Martin, who were absolutely dominating. And I thought at quarter time that was going to be a real thrashing to the Saints. But anyhow, they made the appropriate moves, and they kicked 6-5 to 2-0 in the third quarter. That was the key. And then they got in front, and then they hung on for the rest of the game.
And the last one, another close one. I didn't watch this one at all, but the Pies 11-11-77, Hawthorn 11-6-72, 5 points. Well,
I was a bit like you here. I saw the start of it, and Collingwood just went straight to the lead and got to a 30-point lead, or 30-something point lead. So I didn't bother watching it I went back in the last quarter to check it, and all of a sudden it's a close game. Hawthorn made up ground, and they've turned it into a situation where there was less than a goal, and in the last few minutes they just kept attacking and getting it, but Collingwood managed to hold firm and just hold them out. And as somebody said, Bobby Brady says that they just threw caution to the wind and just went out flat chat and just had a real crack. And anyhow, they just hung on the Pies, and got in by less than a goal. So Hawthorn are way above us at the moment.
No. I knew you'd say that. They were bloody shithouse last week, Mac. You can't go on one game. You and your knee-jerk reactions. Port aren't going to win this. Geelong aren't going to win that. Hawthorn are good. Now they're crap. Now they're good. Come on, mate.
I did say on this game, based on this game.
No,
I did.
Sorry. All right, let's have a look at the round. It's a round 4 ladder, so my apologies. And we're still over the shot, but anyway, I'll just read it out as it reads. The Giants on top on 16 points and one game shy of the other two of the other 4 on 16 points. Melbourne and Sydney, and Carlton and Geelong also on 16 points after 4 games. Port and Fremantle on 12 after 4 games. The Bulldogs on 8 after 4 games and in the 8. St Kilda on 8, along with Gold Coast, Collingwood and Essendon outside of the 8. Collingwood, of course, having played 5 games. God, it's hard reading this, mate. The Lions open their accounts, so they're on 4 points after 4 games. Richmond, after 5 games, also on 4 points. And then the lowly cellar dwellers. Did you think... look. Adelaide, Hawthorn, North Melbourne and West Coast.
Bottom 4. Absolutely.
I didn't think we'd be saying that, Mac. I didn't think we'd be saying that.
I genuinely had great hopes for this season. I did. I really had great hopes.
I thought we'd win one of them. Anyway. All right, let's move on. Because I'm not rushing, Mac, but I'm conscious that the way the afternoon's been and the way I've hobbled this together tonight, this all could come crashing down at any moment. So we're certainly not going to have a 2.5 hour epic like we have the last couple of weeks, for God's sakes. However, um, D's by 15 points in the end, 10-18-78 to 8 goals, 15-63 on a Thursday night. And Macca, my summation was that it was like a big kid holding his arm out and keeping a little kid at bay by, holding his head. You know how they hold their head and they start swinging, but they can't reach. Yeah, that's what it felt like to me all night.
Well, it did it for the last three quarters. In the first quarter, though, I thought in the first quarter we were pretty good in terms of effort and getting the ball into our forward line. I think we dominated inside 50s in that quarter. It was 19-8. But unfortunately, we didn't convert that into goals because there's a very distinct lack of system at the moment, the way the ball's brought in. And I know we've lost our forwards coach and replaced it with our defence coach, but I also think the loss of Thilthorpe is part of the loss of structure as well, because of the fact that he was a good quality tall that even if he wasn't going to mark it, he took attention by their best tools. But at the moment, there isn't a best tool to bother about, so you can just cut out Fogarty and, for example, and Walker, and there's nobody else. So I think that Burgess just showed that he played B grade all last year, and unfortunately he had a couple of reasonable games with us, but his worst came out in this particular game, and it really did leave the two forwards in Fogarty and Walker under great pressure, in my opinion, and particularly when there's very little structure, not correct structure and room for them to move into. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, but we did get the ball in there a lot, but we didn't do much with it because of those reasons that I just mentioned.
Well, I think, that's part of it, in my view. But if you have a look at the game and watch where we were slotting the ball into our forward 50 from, and then if you compared that to how Melbourne were entering their forward 50, and I've noticed this a couple of times across the course of the season so far, we're hitting forward 50 from so far further out, Macca. And the only time we get any sort of depth in our forward 50 entries, aside from the couple of ones where we ended up being able to get it over the back and put it to the advantage of Walker for a mark and I think Fogarty for a mark, which was good. But a lot of other times we were just so wide. We'd get the ball, push up to the 50-metre arc, but we were pushed so wide, we weren't able to penetrate. So a lot of long bombs going in from the wing, a lot of wayward passing going in under pressure from inside that probably 70-metre zone, and a lot of stuff just going wide, Mac.
Well, there's one of the reasons for that was, apart from poor football, was the fact that May was so dominant at centre-half back. I mean, he was in outstanding form. With the bloke that's got cracked ribs, he played out in an outstanding game. And he said, once he gets the ball, his usage of the ball is fantastic. He's very close to their best player. He was so good. Petrarca probably was, but he was very, very good. And as I say, our key forwards played very little part of the game, unfortunately. You are right, we did go wide, but I think a lot of it was to avoid that situation being outmarked all the time, which we were. But there isn't the same way that we bring the ball in as we did last year. It's got no resemblance to it.
No, absolutely not. So we've been fairly emotive the last couple of casts, Macca, and I thought, we really should get back to what we're renowned for. What we're renowned for, Mac, which is some good old-fashioned data.
Well,
because I
yes.
mean, the stats don't lie, do they?
No, they don't. In fact, the first quarter stats were quite good in our favour, but not the result. But after the after quarter time, the stats were terrible against us.
Yeah, there's also some interesting stats in amongst all this stuff. So let me just get myself organised, and my apologies. We'll actually, I'll see if this works, because I'm actually going to do it on. I'm going to do it on the old school way. So I'm going to flick away from the new studio audience, and I'm just studio setup, and I'm just going to actually do it the old school way, Mac. So let's have a look at some team statistics. The other thing that I've done too, with your permission, I've actually, the way that it's presented on the AFL thing, to me doesn't really represent the important stuff. Like, it talks about disposals, it talks about bloody, possessions and all that sort of stuff, which is great, but it doesn't actually talk about the important stuff for mine. And I've split it into 4 categories, right? So I've split, more than that actually: coalface, defensive, disposal, general, offensive, and ruck. Okay, and when you actually split some of these, sorry, I'm just trying to get it to fit on the screen here. Won't be a sec. When you actually analyze it with those, with those categories, it actually starts to tell you a story, right? So I've got here the team stats, and I'm just going to put them up based on each zone. So so if we look at our coalface stats, okay, versus Melbourne, we were, in terms of clearances, we were 37 to 41, so we're down overall on clearances. In centre clearances, we were actually 12 to 7 up, but we got hammered in stoppage clearances, 25 to 34. Pressure acts around the ground, 314 to Melbourne, 264 to Adelaide. We were up on marks, 97 to 85. We were slightly up on ground ball gets, 88 to 85. Our contested possession was around about the same. So that shows that we really, at the coalface, we really got hammered around stoppage. We weren't very effective around stoppage.
Yeah, although we did dominate the stoppages in the first quarter. And if you take them and deduct them from the total, we got slaughtered in the last 3.
Yeah. If you have a look at our defensive ratings, our defensive half pressure acts, we were down 129 to 145. Intercept marks, they killed us again, Mac, 20 to 9.
Every team does.
Intercepts 58 to 54. Rebound inside 50, so that's where an inside 50 comes in and then gets rebounded out. Melbourne were up 46 to 38. Tackles, they were up by 765 to 58. Tackles inside forward 50, they doubled us 14 to 7. So, little trend starting to develop with, you can see now, we've done around stoppage, particularly after quarter time. Ball bounced out of our forward 50 very easily, and they had far more pressure on us than we had on them in our defensive half. Disposals, we absolutely killed them in disposals, Mac. 369 to 313. Effective disposals, 269 to 220. Effective kicks, 145 to 129. Effective handballs, 151 to 111. Kicking efficiency, I can't read that number, but it's better than theirs. Every disposal stat, Macca, we are better than them. So when Matthew Nicks trots out that we're not executing, and I know we did turn the ball over a bit, but comparatively to Melbourne, we were better in every disposal stat. What do you say about that?
Well, it certainly didn't. It didn't look that way when you see the result. And in some passages of play, that sounds almost impossible. But I know you're saying you're reading the stats, and the stats are the stats. But it means we butchering. I can't believe the efficiency is better than theirs. Surely not.
Well, you only have to have a look at the way Oliver and Petrarca kick the ball. They don't kick it with any precision. But what I'm getting from that, Mac, is our overuse of the ball and the amount of disposals that don't hurt the opposition. Okay, we overpossess the ball by hand. We overpossess the ball by foot. We hit a lot of targets, but we didn't hit the target that mattered, because by the time we got to the point where we had to hit the target that mattered, we'd allowed Melbourne to regroup and to set up behind the play, and so there was far too much pressure on us by the time we had to make that key kick. And I think that's what this set of stats tells me, that we spent too much time fluffing around, and once we actually got the ball to a point where we had to make a key disposal to hit a target, for example, say a Max Michaelani hitting into the forward 50, we weren't able to make that kick. Now, to me, that's not execution. To me, that's Matthew Nicks's famous shapes word, in my opinion.
Well, in other words, it's all cluttered up in the forward line and nowhere to go because they're all bunched up together. So, but that's going to happen if you hang on to the ball too long. And
exactly.
There isn't it. And if you just keep doing little 25-metre kicks that aren't going anywhere, and because you can't see a lead, eventually you're forced to kick it long. And by then, of course, you've got oodles of players back there. So. But what we were good at last year was changing the angles, moving the ball around, and getting in there quickly, and that's how you get goals, because you catch them by surprise or catch them out of position. But they've got all the time in the world to set up a structure of defence once you start fiddling around sideways.
Yeah, and this is the point. We were. Hemmed in too often. We weren't able to change lanes, as you say. We'd chip the ball around, but not in any sort of damaging sense. The amount of times we got the ball in a central defensive position around centre half back, for example, and the next kick was actually backwards and across to boundary side. You're actually trapping yourself in that corner of the ground by kicking it there. I don't know what possesses them, first of all, to have that player that's sitting there is the bailout option, in my opinion. He's not the first option, he's the last option. The break glass option. But the amount of times we actually used that option because there were no other options. And the reason is because of our slow ball movement. The other thing that I noticed, and I did queue up a little bit of video, but events of this afternoon just... meant that I couldn't get it up in time. But the amount of times, Macca, that we actually had the options and we didn't use them. We had those diagonal kicks, but we didn't use them. We're playing very safe at the moment.
I have to agree. There were probably somewhere between 12 and 20 times that they could have done that, and they just wouldn't do it. They just, as you said, just played safe, and then I can remember one in particular. We had somebody in the middle that if they'd moved it quickly, it would have been gobbled up and straight down the centre. Instead, they chose to go sideways to somebody on the wing, and then therefore just boxed us into that and gave the defence time to man up. So, I don't know what type of game plan. I don't know what Nick's is telling him to do at the moment, because what we're watching is very, very poor, and surely not what any coach is asking them to do. Or is he? I don't know what he's asking them to do, because there's nothing clear but what we're supposed to be doing.
Well, I mean, I think they're overcoached, Mac, to be perfectly honest with you. I think they're overcoached. I think Matthew Nicks has outsmarted himself, similar to a Luke Beveridge, where he thinks he's smarter than he is. And all these plans and structures and shapes and all this sort of crap, right? It's a very fluid game, AFL football, and you can't play with all that garbage in your head, in my opinion. There should be some 3 or 4 or half a dozen succinct team rules, if this, do that, if that, do this, etc., etc. But it's an instinctive game, and you've also got to allow players to, as Matthew used to like to say, use their weapons. At the moment, we're not allowing any of our kids to use it. The only lad that got to use his weapons was Jake Soligo, and that was by default, and look what happened there, where he's all of a sudden allowed to use his bloody weapons. He absolutely destroys them.
Yeah, I loved his game. I mean, I really did love his game. He just stood out like a beacon, the way that he attacked the ball and tried to do something with it. It was so good.
But go back to my point. Like, the point is that he has stifled them.
Well, I can't argue against you, Ben, because it is that way. They do look like I think he's tried to go overly defensive, which means you eliminate the attack, because the concentration is on stopping rather than scoring goals.
That's what it seems like to me. Yeah, and personnel isn't helping, because we've got a couple of really stodgy midfielders, and we all know that Matty Crouch had a good couple of games in the back half of last year. But Mac, I'm interested in your thoughts on this, because he seems to be reverting to that slow-moving, sideways shuffling player, and he's not getting the ball moving forward. He's not damaging.
Talking about Crouch?
Yes.
Yeah. He certainly wasn't as good with the ball. He got plenty of the ball, as he always does, because he can. He's good at that. But no, I didn't think he used it anywhere near as well as he has been doing. So I noticed the papers had him. I've got to criticise both of them. Ned, I thought, was a bit better than Crouch was in terms of trying to do something with it. He did try and move forward a few times, but it wasn't one of Crouch. It was good for Crouch in terms of possessions for Crouch, but not good with what he was doing with the ball. He was just too. It's like he lost faith in the people around him, and he's just looking around all the time and just hanging on too long.
But he never ever breaks a line, Mac.
No,
never breaks a line. So he's not damaging. Anyway.
Where he can be about is if he gets a ball and somebody runs past, he can give it to them to quickly get it in there. But once he's holding it and moving it around himself, then it's not so good.
But how many times does he give to another bloke who gets caught up in a tackle? And not just Crouch, this isn't Crouch bashing, Leaders as well. How many times do they get the ball and they just dish it out and it turns into a secondary stoppage?
Yeah, because you have to get it out quickly, or they make the right decision. And that they certainly didn't do that. And Dawson is just as guilty at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let me just get one of these out. Get rid of that. Okay. So, get rid of that as well. That's better. That's now readable. So, offensive stats, aside from the scoring, obviously, inside 50s, we were up 54 to 48. Marks inside 50s, 8 to 10 in their favour. Marks on a lead, 9 to 11 in their favour, but not shocking disparity there. Score involvements, despite their their lower disposal count than us. They had 110 score involvements to 90, which means that they were using the ball very effectively, Macca.
Which they did.
Yeah. And you can see here, uncontested possessions, 226 for us, 178 for them. 170, sorry. So what does that tell you?
What do you think it tells us, mate?
What? I'm asking your opinion.
Right, ask me the question again then, please.
Oh, so you weren't paying attention. So 228 uncontested possessions to 170.
Sorry, who's the 228 though?
Okay, we had 228 possessions. They had 170.
Uncontested. Well, I don't know. It just tells us that we were making leads into open spaces that weren't hurting anybody.
Well, it's overuse of the ball. It ties in with the other stats, doesn't it? It ties in with the other stats that we're overusing the ball. Far too many disposals per forward 50 entry, and by the time we get it into a point where we are entering forward 50, we've allowed everyone else to get behind the ball, and it's just a big mess.
There's only one player that really tried to do those quick breaks into the forward line, and that was Soligo. He tried several times to do it and didn't always come off, but at least he did that, and sometimes it came off, sometimes it didn't. But he's doing his part.
Yeah, but at the moment we're talking about team stats, Macca, and what we're talking about is
my point was a lack of people doing it as a team.
Yeah, well, that's obvious. That's obvious by these stats, right? But what I'm saying is it by design, or is it just a makeup of our personnel at the moment? Is it a product of form? Like, Matthew Nicks would have you believe that it's form and it's a breakdown of structure. But to me, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like they're playing the way that they're being told to play.
Yeah, look, in my opinion, they just, as I said, they are concentrating too much on defence and getting back. And the way when we were used to make the ball flow last year, it was players running from the back line, running forward, and there was always a player to give it to, and then that in itself would catch the defence out, and that, because it was coming quickly.
But my question is, Macca, is it by design? Is it by design, or is it a product of form or personnel?
I think it's a product of game plan. That's what I was trying to get at. The over emphasis on defence, which means that we're starting from further way back, and we haven't, instead of trying to get the ball much earlier up the field. In other words, we're trying to get the ball. They all run back to make sure that we try and stop the opposition scoring. But what we were good at was scoring more than the opposition, and that's what we are not doing anymore. We would do. So we basically played last year, not worrying about the other opposition score, just on the basis of trying to kick more than they did.
So what I've noticed, and I've had a look back at a couple of our games this year, and what I've noticed, and it was evident against Melbourne again on Thursday night, was that opposition teams are very willing at the moment when a turnover occurs in their defensive half. They're very willing to run forward of the ball. So the idea is to get forward of the ball, get ahead of the ball, provide options, spread the defence as it's coming out, and allow for that change of lanes and all that sort of stuff. But what I've noticed, when we turn the ball over in defence, and our defence isn't going too badly, we are forcing turnovers and we are being quite competitive in our back half. But what happens when we get the ball is that we are very, very slow to get out of that area and get into a offensive mindset, if you like. You know, I saw many times when we had the ball, we'd turn the ball over either by a mark or a free kick or just in general play, and we had midfielders that were jogging, Mac. And yet when you have a look at, in the case of Thursday night Melbourne, they would be streaming out of there to make themselves spread, to provide options, to make it difficult for us to defend the ball on the way out, all that sort of stuff. We make it so easy on the way out because we're just not very proactive. It seems like we're too afraid to get too away from the contest. It seems that Matthew Nicks has this game style, and I haven't seen his playbook, so I don't know. This is just what I'm seeing. But he seems to have this play style where he wants as many players in as close a proximity to where the ball is as possible. Because there's hardly any spread. There's certainly no urgency to get ahead of the ball and provide options. And he just seems to be content to play the ball on one half or the one side or the other side of the ground. We rarely actually try to attack the corridor this year.
Oh, I totally agree with you. It's terrible to watch because the way we do it, as you're saying, we do tend to concentrate on one side of the ground. I remember one stage there, the ball was stuck on one side of the ground for about 10 bloody minutes. And every time we got it, instead of... we had opportunities to change lanes and we had the opportunities to bring it to the other side, but no, we just kicked it back where it came from and then it just go out of bounds, throw in, then kick forward, out of bounds, go back again, etc. You're right. It's all about trying to get too many players where the ball is rather than have a situation where you rely on your player to get the ball and have someone for him to kick to.
So put your ex-footballer hat on for a sec, Mac, and I put mine on. We're now the coach of the Adelaide Football Club, and we've decided in order to reduce the amount of scores against, we can't commit to as many players forward on transition as what we maybe did last year. So we want to be more reserved in how we transition the ball from defensive half to forward half. My question to you is, that's all well and good, but how are you going to score?
Well, the trouble is you don't. That is the whole problem, mate. And as I said last year, the emphasis was on scoring. This year, the emphasis appears to be on stopping the opposition scoring. I mean, if you have a look at the number of goals we've kicked for the year, it's been 8, 11, 4 and 8. That is way below par. It's disgraceful. And that means that either we have an incompetent forward line or incompetent in the way the ball's being brought in, or we're just bringing it in from too far back. There's so many different things, or we've got a different game plan in the way we can bring in the ball out of defence. And it's very hard to put your finger right on the pulse because it doesn't look like any team structure.
No,
it's not. There's no team structure that screams out, "This is what we're trying to do." That's the problem I've got in trying to analyse what we're trying to do.
Yeah, well, I can see what he's trying to do on transition on the way out of defence, but there's no avenue to goal, and we're not moving the ball up high enough in order to get effective forward 50 entries, because by the time we get past the wing, there's just too many players, right? It's become too congested. Yeah.
Whereas last year, we used to get it there quickly, and there used to be options, mate. Not just one. There used to be options to kick the ball to.
Well, there also used to be space, right?
Yes, they make space. That's because they all lead to different areas. I know when Rahili was coaching, they obviously all had a role where when the ball came in from a certain angle, from a certain direction, player X went that way, player Y went that way, and maybe player Z was the person that was really the target. So the other two were just making space for that player to lead into, so he could just lob it on his chest. So, but none of that exists at the moment. It just seems to be every man for himself.
Now, I would hope that the coaching fraternity or the coaching staff and Nick's in particular would look again at the rebound inside 50s and the marks, like the defensive marks, the intercept marks that were taken by the opposition, not even by the mainstays in May and Lever. Even I think McVeigh had quite a few.
He did.
It's a consistent theme. It's been a consistent theme at least for the last 3 weeks. Not so much against Gold Coast. We weren't quite that stodgy, but certainly the last 3 games it's been a particular theme, and it's a product of like. When you go back and have a look at the way we played against Geelong, it was almost like we were moving the ball down the ground too quickly. We didn't actually have enough options, which meant that Stewart was able to get one out very often. He was able to push away from his player, read the play. There was just not enough alternatives and we've even gone slower now, and we're just allowing the intercept player to have a free fist at it. And I really hope that the coaching staff have a look at it and go, well, this is now a trend. 3 weeks in a row, we've had a major disparity in intercept marks in our forward 50. It's got to be showing us something. Nix was talking about data and fixing stuff and all that the other day. I hope he looks at that data. There's a few other bits of data that I hope he looks at as well. But I hope he looks at that data.
Yeah, look, there was one comment made on the TV which I found very interesting, and if it's right, then it's insane. But it was in the second quarter, I think, that they made a comment that Nix is at the moment seems to have an extra player in defence, which leaves him one short up forward. He'd be much better off bringing that player back into the forward line to give 6 forwards. You remember that comment being made?
Well, I mean, not only that, he's also prone to... He loves pushing players up to the contest. He loves trying to get an outnumber around the contest. That's how he's used Lockie Murphy all this time. He's always pushing a half forward up high into a contest, and it leaves us short in our forward 50. He seems to not... Pardon me, I've got a bad throat tonight. He seems not to be able to go even numbers at a contest and trust that we will win the ball and win the stoppage. And, if we do happen to win the stoppage, we don't break from that stoppage quickly enough to be able to address the numbers situation in our forward 50.
Well, I have to agree with you. And the whole thing is, I have lost total faith in our coaching panel to actually change this around. I don't know whether they can change it around, because in my mind, they've helped put us into this situation, and I'm not sure they're smart enough to get us out of it. And we're undermanned for a start. I mean, we are one coach. We talk about game day coach. We're one game day coach short of what we were last year, because Rahili left. Burns was actually. He was defence, so but he was supposed to be the senior assistant as well. But we actually need somebody to help advise.
We talked about that last week. I want to really focus on the game this week. We've been talking about the same things for the last fortnight, and I feel like we just need to push on a little bit and talk about the game. So, as I said, the stats really point to a couple of real deficiencies. The other thing that I will point to is that our midfield got thumped in ground ball gets, which means that whilst Crouch and Laird and Co are good at stoppages, in general play, they are not so good at winning the ball. Laird and Crouch are not so good at winning the ball, and I think that's an overlooked stat. It's not just. It's not across the whole team. I've been able to isolate. I'll just put it up here. Isolate the midfield group in terms of coalface stats. So these stats up here at the moment are just the midfield group. They're not the entire stats, and you can see that our midfield group compared to Melbourne's midfield group got done 51 to 35 in ground ball gets and 160 to 110 in pressure acts around the ground and 24-9 at stoppage clearances. And when you consider the stats that I'll put up for young Jake Soligo in a moment, you'll realise how much that is all about Matt Crouch and Rory Laird.
Yep, that's a fair comment too, because we were very, very... I agree. They're very poor in those situations.
So, that's why I really wanted to get back down to data, having a look at the data. Matty Nix was talking about data. I thought, well, if it's good enough for you, it's good enough for us. And the stats don't lie, Mac. There's some real trends there, which I'm sure if I went back and did it for previous weeks, it'd be reflective of the same problems. We are slow. We overuse the ball. Our disposal efficiency looks bad because the one that we need to make is always the one that's made under the most pressure. Do you know what I mean? Because it's another stat that's come up in the telecasts over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Every team that we've played against has had off the charts pressure stats against us. And that's because we're so slow, we're almost making ourselves a sitting target.
Well, we are. There's no doubt about that. Now, your point's very valid when you look about what the midfielders are doing other than in the clearances. Because you can sort of visualise Petrarca and Viney, etc. For Petrarca in particular, even Oliver, who's not at his very best physically, etc., was still picking up those kicks around the ground. And that's where, apart from clearances, I think that's where Crouch and Laird let us down badly.
Well, when you consider that we beat them comfortably in disposal stats, Mac, okay, consider this stat for the midfield group, and I'll just put this up on the screen as well for people. This is just the midfield group, okay, versus their midfield group. We had 136 to 155 disposals, so their midfield group actually got more disposals than ours, more effective kicks, and more kicks in general, and the kick-to-handball ratio was higher. So even though their team got beaten quite comfortably in disposals, their midfield beat us in disposals.
Yeah. Well, and look, they've got a pretty classy midfield too. Petrarca, I thought was outstanding on the day, and I thought he had a ball.
But this is just another group of stats that makes you understand how ineffective our midfield is in general play, Mac, in my opinion. And I think it's an overlooked... I'm going to have to make you talk in a minute while I go and get a glass of water, I think. It's an overlooked part of the game because our midfielders like Crouch and Laird, they go missing in general play. If it's not around a stoppage, then don't even bother looking for them. They're not there.
No, it has to be at least it has to be in congestion play. They're not that. Petrarca. I just have visions of him streaming down the ground, and then if it's not Petrarca, they kick it across to Viney or they kick it across to Oliver. So our forwards don't. Our midfield doesn't do that. Dawson did it a couple of times, but Crouch and Laird aren't big on that. Laird did it once. I can remember Laird doing it once. But our midfield is a product of our drafting and our list management team. And, for what we have not drafted an A-grade midfielder for, I don't know, 10, 12 years or something like that. It's bloody ridiculous.
Well, no. I'm not about that. Not talking about the draft tonight. Not talking about the draft.
No. The only thing.
And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why, Mac. I'll tell you why. Because a kid who got picked at 30-odd 3 years ago absolutely showed the way when it came to playing midfield. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to blame. We're not blaming our list tonight. This is not a personnel problem, in my opinion. This is about opportunity. This is about game plan. This is about selection. It's got nothing to do with personnel on the ground in general, in my opinion, particularly the young personnel.
But it has got something to do with personnel, the fact of who you're playing in the midfield and what you've got.
Well, yes, but that's got nothing to do with the draft.
Well, it has in past drafts.
Mate, we're playing, if you want to go back to Matt Crouch's draft and Rory Laird's draft, but the simple fact of the matter is that we don't play Rochelle through the midfield. We don't play Pedler through the midfield. We don't play Berry hardly at all. We don't play Isaac Rankin through the midfield. We've only just this week unleashed Soligo, and he was our best midfielder by an absolute street. What does that tell you?
Best player. Who's their best player?
Yeah, so what does it tell you, Mac?
Well, it tells me that Soligo should have been given an opportunity a long time ago. But I think
then it's not about the draft.
Well, it is, and it is, and it isn't. You've also got to be looking at the quality of your overall midfield, not just one player. It's a whole.
Mate, you're going to make me angry in a minute. Because
how do you know?
How do you know? How do you know?
We just talk rather. I'm sick of being attacked. You keep attacking me.
I'm not attacking you at all. I'm actually trying to keep you on topic, right? How do you know the quality of the midfield if you don't play these kids? 3 weeks ago, Jake Soligo couldn't even get a game in the best 22.
Well, that is ridiculous. But we have tried Pedler. Pedler, we only gave him a small try. But Pedler's form overall was not good enough. But I still think he will be good enough in the long run. But Rochelle, I don't think Rochelle's playing very well enough at the moment. Another thing is that Rankin is a damaging forward, and I must admit though, when he is on the ball, he's a very good midfielder as well. But he can't be in two places. So, it'd be nice to have Rankin and Rochelle up there where they belong in the forward line, and have an occasional run to the ball, and have three bloody good midfielders that you didn't have to bother about. But
well, I don't think Rochelle belongs at half forward, mate.
You reckon he's a pure on baller?
Well, why have him at half forward? He gets absolutely lost there, and then he gets so frustrated that he tries to take the game on his own shoulders and win it off his own back. And when in that last quarter, a couple of those efforts of his, my first reaction was, bloody hell, Rash, that's selfish. But then you got to think about it, and I go back to how Malcolm used to treat Tony Modra, and Mods was a special character. He didn't like to train, he didn't like to do the hard yards, he wasn't in the weight room or whatever, but he'd take a hanger every week and he'd kick you 5 goals. He averaged 3 and a bit goals over the course of his career. There are players that you need to treat a little like individually, and Rash, to my mind, is an ego-driven match winner. Okay, he loves being in the game, and he loves being able to influence the game. And he has spent the best part of every week at the moment dying on a half-forward flank. And what needs to happen is that Nix needs to get him involved. Now, if Nix doesn't want him to get involved in the midfield, put him at half-back. Half forward is the absolute worst place that Josh Rochelle needs to be. Let's not forget, we took this kid at pick 6, right, ahead of a whole bunch of other players, which tells you that we rated him. If we use pick 6 on a bloody half forward, Macca, then everyone needs to be sacked. The simple fact of the matter is that Rochelle is someone who loves being involved. He wants to influence the game. He's got a great turn of speed. He's good in traffic. At the beginning of last year, when he was getting CBAs, he was racking up clearances just like Soligo was, and then he has hardly played since.
Coming back to Rochelle, when we got him, he was, if you like, a player that was going to be half and half, if you like, a forward and a midfielder, because in his own words, he said he'd modelled his game on Toby Green, and which is the forward part of it. So he does, and I know that he played a lot of football, junior football as a midfielder. So I agree with you. He should be both. But as a full-time midfielder, not so sure about that. I think if we had a couple of decent midfielders in there, he would be the icing on the cake type thing, because he's got skills and and you could use him. But yeah, look, I agree with you. He should be used more. But at the moment, I don't think he's in the greatest of form either.
Oh, Macca, how can you possibly get into form on a half-forward flank with the forward delivery that we're getting? I mean, look, at the beginning of the season, Josh Rochelle was interviewed, and one of his comments was that he had enjoyed training with the midfield group during the pre-season, and that he was looking forward to increasing his time spent at centre bounce, and he was hoping that it would be a 50-50 split, and he thought that Luke Pedler himself and Isaac Rankin would form a fairly fluid partnership through one of those positions through the midfield. That's exactly what Rash's expectations were during the off-season. Now, how can a kid have that expectation if the messaging has been, no, you're going to play on a half-forward flank? And if the messaging was, we're going to work you up to 50% midfield time, and then we're into game 4 and he's hardly had an attendance, then do you reckon that he might be feeling a bit disengaged? Do you reckon he might be feeling like he needs to get involved in the game? I don't blame the kid. I don't blame him at all.
No, I understand where you're coming from, and in terms of Rochelle, that's probably true. I mean, that you're right. He loves being in the limelight. He does like being there where the action is. So it certainly wouldn't hurt to put him in there, and because we put Soligo in there, and it showed what the benefit of what he can do when he's given that opportunity to be a main man, and he became the main man, and Rochelle might do the same, but he'd have to do that week on after week, not just 1 week, because at the moment all he's getting is like a sniff here and a sniff there.
It's kind of a kid.
It's got to be. Beg pardon?
He's a kid, Mac.
Well, what's this? He's second or third year with us?
Yeah, so he's a kid.
I still think he's got enough experience behind him to use him more regularly, you know?
Oh, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But you're saying that he has to perform every week. Well, no, he doesn't, because he's a kid. He doesn't have to perform consistently every week. He's not got 50, 60, 70, 80 games under his belt. It's a massive expectation that you shouldn't have. Well, that's how we judge our youth. You know, as soon as they put a foot wrong, they get kicked out.
Okay.
Well, don't you agree?
Wrong again. Well,
oh, mate,
you have to perform when you're given this opportunity, and the midfield isn't just a practice ring. It's you do have to perform, and I'm not saying that he won't perform, but the expectation is that if you're going to play midfield, you do have to perform, because you're up against Petrarcas and players like that, Olivers. So you expect a guy like Josh Rochelle, who's hardly had a centre bounce attendance in the 3 years that he's been with us, to be consistent against the big midfields when he's got 30 games under his belt, 40 games under his belt. I'm Warren's always saying, move on.
No, I'm not. Why are you being so negative? Like we're trying to have a discussion here. My point is
No,
that we
we're
don't
not.
give these. My point is that we don't give these young kids an opportunity. You're saying that, well, if we give them an opportunity, they better perform straight away, or else they're out.
At the moment, Bean, the problem is that people aren't performing. And okay, let's move on.
All right, let's go to some individual stats, shall we? I want to talk about Jake Soligo because he was an absolute standout, in my opinion, Macca. An absolute standout, and it was fantastic to see him get an opportunity to actually play in the midfield. And I thought he showed exactly what he could do. In terms of coalface stats, 3 centre clearances, 6 clearances overall, 14 contested possessions. He had 12 ground ball gets around the ground. He had 2 marks, 22 pressure acts, 3 stoppage clearances. So did everything that he needed to do, Mac, as far as I'm concerned, at the coalface. What do you reckon?
Well, that's one thing we've always agreed on, that Soligo should be playing in the midfield. And the couple of times he ever did get a little sample, he showed that he could play in the midfield, but he just hasn't been given that opportunity often enough. This time he was given a full-blooded opportunity, and those little samples that he showed us that he was good enough, he converted into a full game, the whole game. And he was easily our best player, in my opinion. I thought he was outstanding.
Was able to sustain it. I guess, again, my thing about it being coaching, the fact that he was able to run out a full game against one of the best midfields in the comp and still be effective in the last quarter when the whips were cracking, Macca, you don't get that level of match fit in 3 weeks, do you?
No, he is very, very fit. And he's always been somebody who prides himself on his fitness. And this guy will be an exceptionally good midfielder for us, because he's not that big, but he's hard, he's tough, he's prepared to get the hard ball, and he's quick as well. He just is a good midfielder. He's what we need.
So why the hell was he sub in round 1?
Oh, insanity. Now, that is insanity. Absolutely insanity. I can't answer that because that's just stupid. Somebody said Vardy said fitness in round 1, but that may be right. I don't know.
But you can't be that unfit in round 1 and then be able to run out a game against a top flight midfield 3 weeks later. You can't be that unfit. It's just impossible.
No, I think, didn't he have an injury of some kind? I'm not sure, but I think he
had an injury he had a small injury in the pre-season. What have I done there? Bloody hell. He had a small injury in the pre-season, but all that did was hamper his preparation. It wasn't like the be-all and end-all.
No, but I think this is probably the first week that he's been absolutely 100% fit, that he could run flat out all day, which he did. I thought he was absolutely outstanding, because he was still going hard right in the final siren. It was a terrific effort by a young lad, and they must play him there every week. It doesn't matter who they kick out. I don't care if they kick out Laird or they kick out Crouch. It doesn't bother me who they kick out. He has to be in there.
Yep, I agree with that 100%. He does need to be in there. If you have a look at his disposal stats, for those watching, he had 27 disposals all up. 22 of those were effective, Macca. He had a 80% kicking efficiency and 10 kicks, 8 handballs, or something like that. In general, offensively, his offensive stats, pardon me, 339 metres gained. So compared to the other two midfielders, smashed it. 6 score involvements, 14 uncontested possessions, 6 inside 50s, Mac. So, I mean, it really was a complete effort by young Jake. It really was.
Yep, and other player that I would put in the midfield, not like on a 50-50 basis, is Rankin. Every time Rankin gets put in the midfield, he does get clearances. He has the quality. He's a player.
Now you're just confusing me because I thought we just had that argument.
No, that was Rochelle we were talking about, and I'm saying that Rochelle's not in a good enough form for that. Whereas I think Rankin is, in the sense that Rankin, the couple of times they have put him in the midfield, he's gone very well. I think one of the pre-season games they put him in there, and he shone. The trouble is,
you're not getting any argument from me about having Isaac in the midfield. I absolutely think he should be in the midfield. No argument there.
But the problem is, of course, you really just need bursts from him, because you also need him up forward as well. So, but when he has those bursts, they're very, very good bursts.
So just comparing, sorry.
Sorry, you go on, comparing.
Just comparing Soligo to Matt Crouch, they both had the same amount of centre clearances. Jake had one more clearance overall. Contested possessions 14 to 11. Ground ball gets 12 to 6 in Soligo's favour. Pressure acts was pretty even, 25 to 22. Stoppage clearance is pretty even, 3 to 2. I just want to see what it looked like in terms of disposals. So Crouchy had 30 touches, Soligo 27. Effective disposals, Matt Crouch 20, and Soligo 22, so fairly even there, although Matt had a few more touches. Effective kicks 8 to 4, Soligo's way. Kicking efficiency 80 to 40 in Soligo's favour, Mac. 80% kicking efficiency to 40% kicking efficiency.
I think that was what really stood out, was the fact that Soligo was bursting through the pack. And even when he was slightly off balance, he still managed to find a player. And, his disposal was very, very good.
When you throw Rory Laird into the mix, Lairdy was third out of the three of them in disposals, third out of the three of them in effective disposals. Had slightly more effective kicks than Crouch, was third in handball, was second in kicking efficiency at 63.6, and had one more kick than the other two. In terms of coalface stats, the three of them, Soligo and Crouch were on 3 centre clearances, Laird on 2. Overall, Laird had 3 clearances, Crouch 5, Soligo 6. Contested possessions, Soligo 14, Crouch 11, Laird 8. Neither Crouch nor Laird had a forward 50 ground ball get at all, Mac. In total, Crouch and Laird both had 6 ground balls around the ground. Soligo had 12. Pressure acts... Pressure acts, Crouchy 25, Soligo 22, Laird 17, and stoppage clearances 3, 2 and 1, Soligo, Crouch and Laird. What that points to me, Macca, is that Rory Laird as a midfielder is done.
I think a lot of people have been thinking that for a while. He's been very good. He was a good half-back player. When he came in at a time when we needed another person in the midfield, he's done a very good job. And I think hasn't he won best and fairest 3 times, something like that. He's certainly done well.
Yeah.
But he's also he's 30 now, and he's not as good as he was. And the biggest problem you've got is that although they're not exact replicas of each other, it is difficult to have Laird and Crouch in the same midfield. I mean, the midfield's got to have Dawson in there, and then
agreed.
You've got to have Soligo in there, and that only leaves room for one of those guys. You can only have one of those guys. So, I've got no problem if they're both in the team and then they both rotate off the fence, off the boundary. I've no problem with that either, because they both do give 100% and they can actually do things that are of benefit at times. But to have the two together just doesn't work.
So if you put the full midfield group into the equation, so that's Cook, Crouch, Dawson, Laird, Nankervis, and Soligo with a little bit of Sam Berry, you'll see that the other two lads, particularly in the first half, held themselves quite well as well. And in comparison to Geordie Dawson, Soligo still comes out in front.
Oh, yeah. No, he was number one for the day. No doubt about that.
So I think they've got to look really hard at our midfield mix. I also want to quickly talk about Sam Berry, Mac, because I thought he did all right when he came on.
He did, but when I see Berry on there, I just see a little bit more of Laird to some degree, a little bit more dashing than Laird, but his kicking is not the greatest.
Well, let's put their stats up together. Let's put their stats up together. So bearing in mind that Sam Berry only had, a quarter and a bit?
About a quarter and a half, yeah.
Yeah. So Laird v Berry, Laird full game, Berry quarter and a bit. Clearances 3-1. Contested possessions 8-4, Laird's way. Ground ball gets 6-3, Laird's way. Pressure acts 17 apiece. Mac?
That is Berry's. Well, that is Berry's strong bow. That is his strong bow.
Yep. In terms of disposals, let's have a look. Obviously, there's a disparity there, but kicking efficiency, you've been at Sam Berry in terms of kicking efficiency all year, Mac. He had 7 disposals, 7 effective disposals. 3 of them were kicks, 4 of them were handballs. So he went at 100% disposal efficiency.
But that's not his normal rating, mate. I mean,
so when he does well, you can just say, well, that's not normal. I think you don't look at stats. I think you a couple of turnovers or something might just stick out in your brain, because here's the figures right here.
On 1.5 quarters, yes. Go back and look at every game that Berry's played and give the efficiency rating, and then you'll get a truer picture.
I'm fairly comfortable that he's running at about 75%.
All right, next week, I'm happy for you to come back and with that figure and for his career and tell me what it is. And if I'll concede the fact that if I'm wrong, and you concede it if you're wrong.
Very good. I know for a fact that it's higher than Petrarca's. I know for a fact that it's higher than Oliver's. And I know for a fact it's higher than a few other class midfielders in the competition. And let's not forget he's an inside midfielder, so you would expect him to be on the lower end of the efficiency scale for midfielders.
Look, I know you're a Berry fan.
No. This is not. I'm trying to say that your opinion of Sam might be a little bit skewed. I'm just looking at numbers.
Well, I can only go by how he impresses me, and
okay.
As one, you can't compare him to Petrarca, as somebody says in the chat. You can't.
It's not about comparing him to Petrarca. It's about comparing his disposal stats. His effective disposal stat was what I was talking about, not his whole game, for God's sake.
All right. Okay, we're talking about that.
Well, we were talking about that because I said he was 75% better than Petrarca.
I understand, but it's only one part of the game. It's only one part of the whole game, isn't it?
So defensively, Laird had 9 defensive half pressure acts. Berry had 8 in a quarter. What else did he do? 4 to 6 tackles in a quarter. Here's my thing about all jokes aside, Mac. Here's my thing about Berry compared to Crouch and Laird. Berry gives you more around the ground. Berry gives you more defensive pressure around the ground. So it's all you get from Crouch and Laird is clearance stoppage work, right? When you get what you get with Berry that you don't get with those two is work around the ground.
I think the others work around the ground. They don't necessarily get the ball, but they try. But, I mean, they do pick up touches around the ground.
Well, no, what you're saying is not backed up by the stats, Mac.
You're quoting one game, though.
Well, I'm quoting the last result, right? But I don't think I didn't see anything different from Crouch and Laird that I haven't seen for the last 20 games.
Oh, yeah, but these two guys pick up 30-odd possessions each game, and so they're not all from clearances. So they have to beat them from around the ground. But they don't actually. They're not damaging with it. I agree with that. There's no problem with that.
I'm talking about defensive work, Mako. I'm talking about defensive work. I'm not talking about picking up cheap kicks. I'm talking about defensive work, tackles, pressure acts, those sorts of things.
Look, Berry is 100% try. I've got no problem with that. I just don't see him as a long-term.
You're deflecting. You're deflecting. I'm not going to have this conversation anymore because you're just showing yourself up as being just deflecting the conversation. So let's move on. I don't agree.
Because I don't agree with you. I'm deflecting.
Well, every time I put up a fact, you just deflect away and say, "Well, I don't think Berry's that good." It's like, well, but what about statistics? Right?
I said come and bring me the statistics averages for the whole of his career. You quoted one game on 7 touches or whatever it was, like 7 or 8 touches. I'm talking about a whole. The player's got to be good for a whole career, not just for 8 touches.
No, because what we're picking our team on is not the career, but next week. Right? So next week, we've got to pick our best 22. It doesn't matter what Laird and Crouch have done in their career. It matters what they've done in the last 5 weeks, Mac. And that's a dead set certainty. And the fact that we don't is the very reason, the fact that we employ your selection philosophy is the very reason why we're at where we're at. Is because you're looking at someone's career and I'm looking at what happened recently.
Well, somebody said in the chat, Macca doesn't rate Berry. Well, they're correct. I just don't. No.
Address what I just said. Address what I just said.
God, it's like being in fucking school.
Well, don't you keep diverting away. I'm saying you need to look at the last 5 weeks, not the career. I don't care who you're talking about, Berry, anyone. You can't look at just at the career stats and select on that basis. That's why we've got Brodie Smith in the team. That's why we gave Crouch another 2 years. That's why Laird's still in the middle. Like, we've got all this deadwood back based on career stats. You got to look at recent stats. What's happened in the last month? What's happened in the last 6 months? That's what you got to look at. Surely.
I still don't. While you're right about that, I still don't think that Berry is the answer, because
I'm not even talking about Berry anymore. I'm talking about statistics and what I just said. I don't care who you're talking about. I don't care, take the name off the table, right? What do you look at? Do you look at the career, or do you look at the most recent history when you're selecting a side?
Recent form.
So why do you want me to go back and look and compare someone's career to someone's recent history? I don't know, but anyway,
because you made a point about the 8 bloody disposals.
Exactly, which is recent history.
A very small history. That was the point I was trying to make.
Okay. Anyway, this podcast is becoming unlistenable, Macca. So
because I don't agree with you.
It's not that. All right. What else did I want to point out? Pardon me. I don't know what's going on with this cough. Now, defensively, we had a couple of contributors, Mac, but what hurt us quite substantially, in my opinion, was our small brigade. Chase Jones, Patrick Parnell, and to a slightly lesser degree, Mitch Hinge.
I agree with that. Was what you said there. I actually divided our players into 3 categories, and I've written them down on a piece of paper. And would you humour me enough to? I put them down into satisfactory, in the sense that you were happy enough with their game. Average, where they were sort of around the mark, but maybe could have done a lot better. And then poor. So I had 1, 2, 4 players in the poor category. And in the good category, I've only got 1, 2, 3, 4 with a question. No, 4 probably. And then the others all fit in the middle in the average category. So my 4 good players were Soligo, Dawson, Keane, and believe it or not, Smith. I thought Smith played a good game. You agree?
Not really, no.
Okay. Where do you disagree with that?
No. We were talking about defensive players, so I don't know why you're talking about Soligo.
Well, no, you actually mentioned players that were played poorly.
No, I said in our defensive half, I think our taller players played well, but our smaller players let us down. Parnell, Jones, and to a lesser degree, Hinge.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you did. Okay. Well, I agree with your comment on that too. In fact, I thought Keane was outstanding. I had Keane as our second best player behind Soligo.
Yeah, I'd agree with that 100%. He was excellent, and he's, probably I wouldn't say Melbourne's forward line is the most challenging. But they do have a couple of good players there. Van Rooyen is a pretty good player, a little bit flashy still. Brown was taken right out of the game, which I thought was he can sometimes bob up and kick 3 and be a pain in the neck. Keane's coming along really well, and I think him, Worrell and Butts are forming a really good combination back there, Mac. And the beauty of that is that I reckon it gives us some flexibility when Murray comes back. And if you're talking about if you're talking about a marking forward, Macca, I'd love to give Muzzer half a dozen games up forward and watch him crash packs.
I remember he played one game, I think it was at centre half forward, and he was doing exactly what you just said. And he was outstanding, I thought. So, yeah. Once he's 100% up and running, and he's got his confidence back underneath his belt, and he's got his form back underneath his belt, it would not be a silly move at all to do that, putting it centre half forward.
I wonder if they'll try it, because we've only seen glimpses of him up forward, but the way he attacks the ball, the danger would be how many people how many of our players would he injure on the way through. I'm not sure, but I'd love to see him have a crack up forward.
He's absolutely fearless, and he can really get off the ground. I think it would be a good move. But coming back to the game itself, what we're talking about, you are right that those 3 back line players, I thought they played very well, given the fact that after quarter time they were under siege a lot, and I thought Worrell was good, and I thought Keane was good, and I thought Butts did a reasonably good job. And I know that Fritz got 3 quick goals, but the way that ball was brought in, that nobody could have stopped that anyhow.
Yeah. So just looking at, let me just isolate on one particular stat for our players in our defensive half, Macca. and that's metres gained. Now, metres gained, the number that backs up your opinion, Brodie Smith, 649 metres gained. Look, I felt he was better. Was he great? I didn't think so, but he was certainly better.
He actually did some passes that found Chester this time, Clean.
Yeah. And what I did like about Brodie's game was that he actually, him and Michael Annie did push up a bit. They had a couple of forward 50 entries between them, and Smithers was the one that I think hit Tex on that long kick in that got over the back.
He did.
But the two that I want to focus on, Macca, are the two smalls, Jones and Parnell. Now, Jones had 196 metres gained. Paddy Parnell 74. Patrick Parnell is made the best of his opportunities. It was a mid-season draft. Obviously can football. I don't ever want him in our side again.
Well, I can say I'm in total agreement with you, Fiend. I think when you've got to resort to Patrick Parnell in your side, you're in trouble. Look, he's little and he tries, but not for me.
Yeah. And if you talk about people that are out of form at the moment, Chase Jones is out of form. He's not carrying the ball. He's playing so risk averse at the moment. He's not doing anything that's going to expose him to possibly making a mistake. You'll see him run in and lay a good tackle just as the guy's going out of bounds. You'll see him dig in as third man in a stoppage or whatever. He's playing too safe. He's not being aggressive enough. He's not being proactive enough. He's not using his pace. He's not using his strength. At this point, I know we've got issues across half-back with Miller out for the season, but we've got the young lad, Ryan, in the twos. I'd be fast-tracking that lad in because Chase at the moment, and Patrick in particular, but also Chase hasn't shown anything this season, and it really disappoints me with Chase Jones because I actually thought that he'd found his niche across half-back there. I really did. But he just seems to have gone back into his shell again.
I 100% agree with you, Fiend. I think that bringing in Oscar Ryan is probably worth it. It might be early in the game, but we're not playing that well, and if you're going to be risk averse, then you won't get anywhere. And Oscar Ryan really does look the part in the twos, so I'd be quite happy to bring him in. Just dealing with Jones, I thought he made it last year, but he just hasn't continued with it this year. He's just not at the same level as he was last year, and he seems to have lost confidence again.
Yeah, it's a real shame. I don't understand what's happening, Mac, with the young lad. I really don't. But never mind. You talk about players needing to perform in order to retain their place in the side. Well, he's one that just hasn't.
Well, if they've got someone to replace him, he's up for replacement. If he's going to continue at this rate, because he's certainly not playing very damaging football at all.
No. The one thing that I will say is if we have a look at pressure acts defensively, that's where he still figures 17 pressure acts, so he's got a game high tally. But then you wonder about that stat for some players because Mark Keane's down for 4 pressure acts. What?
Well, there are some players that can do pressure acts and other players that actually get the ball. And Keane actually got the ball. I think that's a difference.
Yeah. So that's a weird one. But yeah, we definitely have a problem at halfback, in my opinion. We're not getting anywhere near the bounce off halfback. Now, again, we go back to the conversation at the beginning of the podcast, is that by design? Are we not breaking? Is that how we're designing our game plan? I don't know. But we're certainly lacking drive through, for whatever reason, off that line. And I think that's probably where we are. I think that's the biggest disparity between this year and last year, Macca, is just the bounce off halfback and our ability to break through, change lanes, hit up a target, and put a score on the board. We just don't seem to be able to do that this year.
No, and it's the speed at which the ball is coming as well, because much like last year, we would have players going in all directions, which it's impossible to cover all directions.
That's right.
Always gave an opportunity, whereas that we, as you say, we keep clustering over to one wing and there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, that's right.
We don't have that same rebound as we had last year, and it's that quick rebound, if you can get that into the forward line really quickly, that always catches the defenders out, because they can't cover everybody then. Yeah.
So, look, unless there's anyone else that you wanted to talk about, Macca, that's pretty much it for me. I'm disappointed that the coach seems to just be willing to continue to go down the same road and continues to blame the players in terms of form and all this sort of stuff. And I really want him to take some responsibility. I put up a little snippet of an article, Mac, during the week. It was comments about Ange Postecoglou and what he's done at Tottenham. And one of the things that Ange has done at Tottenham is that he's had them playing a very open, aggressive, attacking style. He defends really high on the pitch and all the rest of it. And often it works and sometimes it doesn't. But when it doesn't work, he takes full responsibility. And he's got their back. He takes responsibility. And I also heard, after Collingwood went 3 down in a row, that Craig McRae texted each of his players individually with a specific message saying, "I've got your back. I've got your back." Yep.
Individually. That is outstanding. That is outstanding.
And yet we've got Matthew Nicks blaming the players, saying that we've got players out of touch. They're not adhering to structures, all this sort of stuff. He is not taking any responsibility at all, but he hasn't got the players' backs. And as much as he has done well to build the culture over a period of time, over the last couple of years, he will lose them in a heartbeat, and I reckon he's already losing them, because A, he's playing this dodgy game plan, B, he's not giving young kids an opportunity to play in the positions they were drafted to play, and C, he's hanging them out to dry publicly. Where you going, Macca? You gone quiet. No, can't hear you, Mac. Macca, I can't hear you at all. Macca, I can hear your mouth. I can see your mouth moving, but we haven't got you at all, Macca. Can someone put in the chat to Macca? Because I don't think he can hear me either. So Discord can hear Macca, but I can't. That's interesting. What's happened here? Oh, it's kicked me out of the stage again. That's why.
And then
there we go.
Discord can hear me, but other people
can't. No, it's fine. It's fine now. Discord for some reason keeps kicking me out of the stage. Maybe it's sick of me. I don't know. It keeps kicking me out.
I was just saying while you were absent, Bean, is the fact that Nick's did a pretty good job in taking us from where we were and taking us to a team that could have and should have been in the 8 last year. But it takes a very, very good coach to take a team and take it into the finals and be successful in the finals. And that's a totally different animal to the creature that Nix is. It's somebody that's got that real know-how and experience and at taking teams into finals and from a certain level. And really, I think Nix, we should have patted him on the back and said thank you and got ourselves, at the end of this year, a coach that is capable, an experienced coach that's played, just taken teams into finals. And I'm really worried about our future with this guy.
I somewhat disagree with you, Macca, on this one, because there's a couple of examples in the competition right now that don't fit the profile that you just described. Now, Craig McRae was not an experienced coach. He didn't have any of the attributes that you said. But what he did have, obviously, what he does have, is a very good people management approach.
Yes.
And he's willing to be the shield for his players while he's getting them to play the way he wants them to play, and when they're down on form, he will cover for them. You know, Adam Kingsley is another one who's come into this competition with no head coaching experience, and he's got GWS flying, and the bounce from the moment he walked into that place at the Giants was, quite stark.
Yeah, the players, the coaches you quoted that were successful but not head coaches, but they were, if I remember rightly, they were assistant coaches with successful teams. Yes.
Well, yeah, but Matthew Nix played in the Bloods culture at the Swans, and he also was an assistant coach at Port Adelaide.
He was.
So I don't think Matthew Nix's background is much different to Kingsley or McRae, to be honest with you.
But were Port successful when Nix was there?
Well, I can't remember. But Sydney certainly was when he was playing.
Well, he certainly. I did like him when he got appointed because of the fact that he had that Sydney background, and to some degree it's there. But I don't think he's got the ability to take us all the way, Fanny. I'd love to be wrong.
No, you know where I sit on it. I don't think so either. But you're making this point about was he successful at Port? All I'm saying is that Kingsley and McRae they were first time coaches, right? I don't think you necessarily need to have. I mean, I'd like to have Nathan Buckley is who I'd like to have, because I think, like Voss, I think Bucks, when he got the job at Collingwood, he had a bit of a messiah complex. I mean, it was his first gig after playing, and he was revered as a player, and just the same as Voss was as a player. You know, he steps in and he's so meticulous and so unforgiving in terms of his own professionalism and his expectations were huge on his players. Whereas now, when you listen to him in the media now, I think he's far more objective. I think he's got a far more balanced outlook on the game and people. I think he'd still be quite demanding as a coach. But what he does have that I think that we need in Adelaide is a similar sort of profile to Malcolm Blight, that he would come in with a modicum of respect and be able to say, I'll come in, but I'm doing this. I'm using my own coaches. I've got control over this, that, and the other. And this is, if you want me in, this is how it's going to be. Whereas there's no way in the world that Matthew Nix would have come into the job with that sort of an attitude.
Well, I totally agree with you. I think, but and Buckley's got he's got his kids here at school at the moment for the next 2 years. I just wonder whether some stage it just might happen for him.
Yeah, but having said that, Buckley's the one that stands out to me. But clearly, and you look at Adam Uze, for example, he's got Richmond playing pretty decent footy as well. But clearly, Kingsley and McRae were selected by people that were looking for the right attributes, right? So
yeah.
It begs the question, are we looking for the right attributes, or were we looking for the attributes that suited us at the time, and are they still the attributes that we need? Or were we looking for the wrong attributes? Were we looking for someone who would, I've heard how Nick's has fit in so well and he's so good in the media and all this sort of stuff. I heard a lot of stuff from Adam Kelly the other day when I thought, what's it got to do with coaching a football team? I heard some stuff from Timmy Silvers and thought, what's it got to do with coaching a football team? It was all very corporate sounding, wasn't it?
I heard both those interviews, and all I heard out of that was we're in trouble because these guys aren't talking football.
No, that's right. We're talking your number one appointment for football success, and they're talking about all this peripheral stuff that doesn't matter a damn.
Yeah, I must admit that both those filled me with concern because there's no Neil Baum type person there. Somebody who is really a real football head and really knows what's going on.
Well, let's face it, Adam Kelly's been kissed on the backside by a fairy. When you have a look at his background, how he is a general manager of footy operations at the Adelaide Football Club, I'll never know. And he's completely invisible. The first time they trotted him out last week after I called him invisible on bloody Big Footy.
Oh, dear.
All of a sudden he's in the media. It's like, oh, Adam, you live.
That is hilarious. Absolutely hilarious.
But what has he done? What does he do?
I don't know what he does. I don't know what they do. I guess they do things, but Kelly's not qualified to clean toilet. No, it's a situation where they don't have that persona about them that says, I'm a football man and we can turn this into a good footy club.
No, Daniel Jackson's obviously there from a cultural perspective, and that's fine. And I don't know about you, Mac, but as a footballer, there's one thing that trumps everything when it comes to building a good culture at a football club. And what's that?
Well, I think it's a good coach.
I think it's winning.
Well,
if you start winning, there's nothing that bonds a group better than winning. And if you've got a group of players that believe in the direction that coach is taking them, and they're engaged in the game plan, and they feel like they've got a sense of purpose and they can impact results and all the rest of it, that's what gets a group of players engaged. Not this robotic crap, right?
No, you are right, but also the inverse holds as well. Once you start losing, they do lose faith in the plan, etc.
100%, and that's what I guess. That's the counter to what I'm saying is that I think we're at a point now where, as much as Matthew Nix and the group down there have spent a lot of time rebuilding the culture, whatever that means. I mean, if you've got a new group, there should be no cultural issues. So, what was the culture? No one's ever been able to define what the culture was that they were trying to rebuild. But anyway, they're now 3-4 years down the track. Now we're at the point where the rebuild, according to Brodie Smith, at the beginning of the season was done, and finals are on our mind.
Yep,
unbelievable. The culture could fall off a cliff very quickly, and I see it in blokes like Josh Rochelle, right? Who are just not. He got drafted as a number 6. Like, he got drafted. They bring them in, they talk them up, and then they don't play them. It's like, why do these kids like spit the dummy? Why do they leave? Why do they become disengaged? It's exactly that. And when you see blokes running around like Laird and Crouch and Smith and all the rest of it that are being gifted games for bugger all reason, I'd get disheartened. I'd be looking for another club.
Well, you quote Rochelle, you're right. His very first game was an absolute ripper of a game. Like Dream Team points, I think he got 100 Dream Team points, and that you have to play very well and get the ball a lot for that to happen. And in his first year, I think he was playing better football than he's playing now.
Well, because he hadn't had a chance to be reined in by the coaching staff, maybe.
That's probably right.
He would have been happy just to be on the ground at that point, and now he's looking to have an impact and play a role and all the rest of it, and he's stuck in no man's land on a half-forward bloody flank with the ball getting mongrel punted in, kicked over your head, kicked to the wrong player, kicked to the defensive side of you, not kicked to your advantage at any stage. I mean, be buggered.
So, do you think Nix will last how long, Frank? Do you think he'll come good?
No, I don't think he'll come good at all. I don't think he's up to it. I had my questions at the beginning of the season.
I did too.
You know, I think many people thought that this was going to be a pivotal year for him, and irrespective of what happens from now on, he's failed.
Well, he has so far. There's no doubt about that. I can't believe he got signed when he did, because, you know, if you're in a business, you don't promote somebody who hasn't done anything. They have to perform before they get.
Yeah, I know, but we've done that. We've done that. He's signed. So your question was, when does he get sacked? Well, if they're willing to sign him on the back of nothing, well, I don't think they're going to be sacking him anytime soon.
And we could be in for a terrible. Well, we do look like we're going to be in for an ordinary year, but you never know. We might just have one game where we turn it around. I don't know. Footy's a funny thing that if you've got the players playing well on one day, they might just turn it around and get confidence and belief again. But at the moment, they're bereft of that. You can see they're lacking confidence. They're lacking
certainly
belief.
lacking confidence. Certainly lacking confidence, mate. And that's a hard thing to turn around collectively. I mean, you know, Nick talks about players out of form. You don't have a whole team out of form. You might have one or two players out of form. You don't have a whole team out of form. If he thinks that's the reason, then he's just in denial about his own impact on what's going on. And, there's a lot of water to go under the bridge, Mac. I could see them maybe, if we end up being bottom four towards the back end of the season, I could see them maybe making a call then and paying him out and looking around. But I think they might have their eyes on somebody at the end of the next 2 years, Mac. What do you think?
I don't know. Is there an individual in mind you're thinking?
Well, I mean, who did we play on the weekend?
Who did we play?
Yeah.
Melbourne.
And who's out of contract at the end of next year?
Oh, good one.
Yep.
And
who was a business partner with Mark Rasciuto for a long period of time?
Yes, he was. Yeah, he was.
I would suggest that the timing lines up rather well. I don't know whether I want Goody at the club. I really don't. But I wouldn't mind betting. There's a bit of a sniff around that one.
That could be right. It could be right. But it's whether Nick's can last that long.
Oh, well, you know, we'll see what happens.
But as I said, I just hope that, you know, it's been a horrible start to the year, 4 losses, and who knows? I just hope we find some form against North Melbourne, get a win under our belts, get some belief that we can win games again, start moving the ball more quickly, and these things can turn around. And I'm not saying it will turn around, but you just need one really good game can do it. And if they get the belief in themselves again, then maybe it won't be as bad as it's looking. But
well, mate, I'm telling you right now that if we don't beat North,
yep,
we may as well just. It's
all over. Yeah, it's all over then. Yeah, it's a pivotal game for us, really, because
we're not playing North next week. We're playing Carlton next week.
Oh God!
I think it's North the weekend after. We're playing Carlton next week.
Oh well, you know, on paper it's impossible for us to beat them, but you know they decide to get beaten. But I wouldn't. I wouldn't put any money on it.
No. So I think we've got Carlton, and then we might have North, and then we might have a showdown. Oh, Carlton, Essendon, North, and showdown.
Yes. Well, I'm not.
Ooh, it's going to get hot in that coach's box.
Well, it will. It will. If we lost all those games, surely they'd have to do something. But
Never mind. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, it is only 4 games in, and I'm talking doom and gloom, but that's how I feel, unfortunately, because watching that game just we never looked like a football side at any particular stage. Only when Soligo had the ball and did some of those attacks, it was just so pathetic for him. They had so much attack, and wasting the ball. It makes you so
never mind.
despondent.
Never mind. That's probably our time done. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord and YouTube. And God, crikey, sorry about that. My throat's cactus. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on all the platforms. Don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, we would love to get a subscribe and a like. Sorry, it's been a bit scratchy tonight, one thing and another. But we will certainly be back again fit and firing next week for another round of the weekend wrap. In the meantime, take care. Have a good week. Macca, have a good week. We'll see you next week.
Okay. Night all.
Night all.